Last class we started talking about quadratic functions, the shapes that quadratic functions make when we graph them. We're talking about, well, how do we solve problems pertaining quadratic functions. This is the last new topic you have to learn this year. So it is very important that you are taking this homework seriously, you're understanding it, you know what you're doing. Because if you don't, then you're going to be behind. So please make sure this is like we are in class, that you are going to highlight your title, because these are going to go in your notes. So quadratic functions. What kind of graph does a quadratic function make? Well, it makes a U-shaped curve, which is called a parabola. A parabola, remember, looks like this. It is a U-shaped curve. A parabola can either open up like a smiley face, or it can open down like a frowny face. Usually our parabolas are always opening up because usually our leading coefficient is always positive in this class, so they're always going to be facing up, but sometimes they can face down. Last class, we learned two huge vocabulary words that are the biggest vocabulary words because you always forget them. Roots and zeros. Whenever you hear the word roots or you hear the word zeros, those mean the exact same thing as what? Well, they mean the exact same thing as x-intercepts. How do I find x-intercepts? Well, I plug 0 into y and solve. That's all I'm doing. So this whole front side is basically practice. So I'm going to walk you through a couple, and then the expectation is that you finish this front side of the worksheet on your own, and then you resume playing the video. So if we do number 1 together, it says solve the following. M squared minus 5m equals 14. I'm solving for m. My goal is to get m by itself. When you see a problem like that, a light bulb should go off in your head. What's that light bulb? Well, the light bulb is, you have to factor because m is squared. So in order to factor, you have to make this equation equal 0. So how am I going to make that equal 0? Well, I'm going to subtract 14 on both sides. So I have m squared minus 5m minus 14 equals 0. I know 14 comes last because 14 doesn't have a variable. It's always in standard form, biggest degree to no degree. So looking at this equation, I now can factor it. So it's the first question you ask yourself. Is there a GCF? No? Excellent. Next option, X method. Negative 14 goes on the top, negative 5 goes on the bottom. Factors of negative 14 that make negative 5. Negative 7 and 2. So I have m minus 7 and m plus 2 equals 0. There is a trigger in this problem that tells your brain you are not done. I know I'm not done because I have this equal sign. Whenever you have that equal sign, you have to split up your factors. Your factors are always separated between multiplication signs. So they're right here. So I'm going to do, I'll write this in red so we can see it. M minus 7 equals 0 and m plus 2 equals 0. So m equals 7 and m equals negative 2. Those are my solutions. You're going to pause this video, you're going to solve letter B, or if you don't want to pause it, you want to solve it at the end, that's cool too, because I am moving on to number 2. So I'm going to erase this so I can see the next piece. It says find the roots of the following and sketch the graph. I want you right now to highlight the most important word in those directions. Hopefully the word you highlighted was the word roots. Roots is the most important. Roots mean the exact same thing as x-intercepts. How do you find x-intercepts? Well, you plug 0 into y. So I'm going to plug 0 into y, and now I have 4x squared plus 8x plus 3. I'm pretty sure on your piece of paper, this example has a typo in it. Make sure your example matches the one that's on the board right now. Alright, take a look at this. There should be a light bulb that goes off in your head. How am I going to solve this? I have to factor. How do I know I have to factor? Because x is squared. So, first question you ask yourself, is there a GCF? No? Great. Are you going to do the x method or are you going to do the slide and divide method? I'm going to do the slide and divide method because I have a leading coefficient over here. So 12 goes on the top, 8 goes on the bottom. Factors of 12 that make, I'm going to put S and D so my brain remembers. Factors of 12 that make 8. 6 and 2. From here, I got to divide by 4. Simplify my fractions. I get 1/2, and I get 3/2. So when I write my parentheses, I got to bottoms up the denominator, 2x plus 3, and 2x plus 1 equals 0. I know I'm not done because I have this equal sign right here. Whenever you have an equal sign, it tells your brain you got to go a step further. Every time you see a time sign, split it up. 2x plus 3 equals 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. So over here, x is going to end up equaling negative 3/2. Over here, x is going to equal negative 1/2. So now I got to sketch my graph. So let me see if I can erase some of this, which I might not be able to. Oh, yay, I can't. All right, so I'm just going to come over here and sketch it. So negative 3/2 and negative 1/2. When you get fractions and you have to sketch your graph, I just recommend turning them into decimals. So negative 3/2 is about negative 1.5. So negative 1.5 goes, let's just say right there. Negative 0.5 would be right there, about. Hopefully you did that a little bit prettier on your paper. And now I'm going to make the world's tiniest parabola through it. Alright? So, you need to finish these practice problems. Section 1, 2, and 3. And when you finish, I want you to attempt the challenge problem. And then when you attempt it, and you can't figure out what's wrong with it, I want you to press play because I'm going to keep going. So on this challenge problem, I got to first make sure I factor it because x is squared. So I got to make this equal 0. So I'm going to add 4x. And I'm going to subtract 7. So now I'm going to factor by doing the slide and divide method, negative 14 and 4. Negative 7 and 2, that doesn't work. 7 and negative 2, that doesn't work. How about negative 14 and 1? Nope. 1 and 14, nope. So what do you notice? Can't factor. Ladies and gentlemen, my goal is to be able to solve for x. X must equal something. It makes no sense that I can't factor it. You would write unfactorable, but that's still not going to help me get x. That's my problem. So when you cannot factor an equation, you must use the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is a formula derived to solve any quadratic equation that cannot be factored. If you look at this equation, I couldn't factor it, so I have to use what's called the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula states, given a squared plus b squared plus c equals 0, you may use this formula right here. Notice this formula is the ugliest formula you have ever seen. It's alright because it's not hard. It just is a little bit of time, and that's it. So what this formula says, x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. They get the letters a, b, and c from this equation right here. A is next to x squared, b is next to x, c is alone. This plus or minus thing right here is the only thing that should have you a little bit concerned right now, and that's because you don't know what it means. But keep in mind, when you're solving a quadratic equation like we did up here, how many different answers did I get? I got 2, because my exponent had an exponent of 2. If you come down here and you look at your quadratic formula, this plus or minus is how you get those 2 answers, because you're supposed to have 2 answers. Alright, so before we get started using the quadratic formula, I need to make sure I can find A, B, and C properly, because if I can find those properly, I can plug it in, and then all I do is follow PEMDAS to solve. One thing I do want to keep in mind that you know, the quadratic formula works for everything. If you hate factoring, but you love the quadratic formula, excellent, use it. It works every single time. It just takes a little bit more time than factoring, which is why we usually like factoring more. So if I look at this example, I need to find A, I need to find B, and I need to find C. So a equals 4 because it's next to x squared. B equals 8 because it's next to x. C equals -5. Next one, a equals, b equals, c equals. A equals 1 because there's nothing in front of x squared, so it's 1. B equals -7, and C equals 6. I want you to pause this video. I want you to just see on your own, and then unpause it, please. A equals 2, B equals 21, C equals -5. C is -5 because in order for this, it has to be on the other side. My equation has to equal 0 in order for me to know A, B, and C. So go ahead and flip your paper for me, please. Let's actually get to the fun part, the quadratic formula. And I'm going to write the quadratic formula up here so we have it. You should already have this on your notes. Excellent. So I'm going to highlight my title, but hopefully not in black. That's not fun. Steps to follow. Step 1. Find A, B, and C. We just did that on the last side. Next step, plug values into formula. Step 3, follow PEMDAS to solve. In the very beginning of the year, when we followed PEMDAS, we always got rid of the ugliest stuff first. So the ugliest thing in this problem is the square root. So get rid of square root first. Number 4, split answer into 2 paths once square root is gone. This is supposed to sound confusing because you don't know how to do it yet. I have full faith you'll figure this out. Not hard, as long as you have a calculator. At this point, if you don't have any form of calculator on your desk or on your lap, however you're taking your notes today, make sure you have a calculator. Your cell phone calculator will be fine, but it's not going to be as nice as a normal calculator. So, alright, example 1. So I got to do the quadratic formula because I can't factor it, or even if I can factor it, I'm still doing the quadratic formula. So I got to find A, I got to find B, and I got to find C. So A is 2, B is 4, C is -7. So now, step 2, plug values into the formula. So I'm going to use this formula, and every time I see an A, I'm plugging in 2. Every time I see a B, I'm plugging in 4. Every time I see a C, I'm plugging in -7. So, x equals the square, nope, I lied. I don't even know the formula. What's wrong with me, people? X equals the opposite of B. So this is -B, which just means the opposite of B. So if B is 4, what's the opposite of B? -4. Plus or minus the square root of B squared. So what's B? It's 4. Whenever you plug numbers in, make sure you wrap parentheses around it. Minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is -7. I'm getting all of this from the formula. All over 2 times A is 2. So right now this looks an absolute mess. So my goal is to clean it up. You want to clean up everything that is underneath your square root sign first. So everything under here. If you're using a graphing calculator, your life is going to be wonderful. And let me show you. I'm trying something new with this program, so let's see if I can pull it up. So hopefully you see my table here. Let's see. Let's see where you can see it. Alright, so hopefully you can see me typing on this calculator. So I'm going to type literally everything underneath that square root sign as I see it. So parenthesis 4, parenthesis squared, minus 4, parenthesis 2, parenthesis, and then -7. Right here, if you accidentally type in -4, it's going to be wrong. So this is -4 times 2 times C, times negative 7. So I'm going to hit enter. I get 72. So I have x equals, let me not write in yellow, negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 72 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. So now in my calculator, I'm going to do the square root of 72. And I get a decimal, so I'm just going to round to 1 decimal point. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus, the square root of 72 is 8.5, all over 4. Okay, and this is all connected, which is not what I was hoping for. Let's X that up. Oh no! Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out how to use this. That's not going to work. Alright, so I'm just going to leave it there. So, now that I'm down to 2 numbers, or 3, I got rid of my square root, it says split my answer. So this can go in 2 directions. You can say negative 4 plus 8.5 divided by 4, or you can say negative 4 minus 8.5 divided by 4, because that's what that plus or minus tells me. Negative 4 plus 8.5 or negative 4 minus 8.5. Remember, I get 2 answers because my exponent is squared. So in my calculator, I'm going to do negative 4 plus 8.5, if I can type, negative 4 plus 8.5, enter, divide by 4. I get 1.1, so 1.1 is one answer. And then I'm going to do negative 4 minus 8.5. I have to hit enter first because my calculator is not sophisticated to do it all. Divide by 4. I get negative 3.1, and that's my other answer. So the quadratic formula, you're going to get decimals if you can't factor it. If you don't get decimals, that means you could have factored it. So let's do another one, because I would imagine you're a little iffy on this. So let's go over and do example 2. Step 1, find A, B, and C. A is 4, B is 21, C is 5. So now I'm going to plug it into my formula. X equals the opposite of B, so if B is 21, the opposite is negative 21, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C. Make sure you're wrapping your answers in parentheses when you plug them in. All over 2 times 4. So now I'm going to open up my calculator and I'm going to type in everything inside my square root sign. So parenthesis 21 squared minus 4 times 5. And I get 361. So let me see if I can keep this recording. So I have negative 21 plus or minus the square root of 361 all over 2 times 4, which is just 8. So I'm now going to do the square root of 361. So second x squared, 361, not 362, 361. I get 19. So now I have negative 21 plus or minus 19 all over 8. So now I can split this into 2 directions. Negative 21 plus 19 divided by 8. Negative 21 minus 19 divided by 8. So in my calculator, negative 21 plus 19, I got to hit enter first, divide by 8. I get negative 0.25, which is just negative 1/4. And then negative 21 minus 19, enter, divide by 8. I get negative 5. So I hope you notice on this problem, I got a number, a whole number. Whenever you get a whole number, ladies and gentlemen, that means you could have factored this original equation. This original equation could have been factored. So just kind of keep that in mind. So for you, for practice, I want you to practice number 3 and number 4, and then I want you to stop. I do not want you to do number 5 or number 6. You're going to do number 3, you're going to do number 4, and then you're going to stop. I am aware that they might be able to be factored. If they are able to be factored, I don't care. I want you to do the quadratic formula because this is practice. We'll practice a little bit more of this in class, but nothing major, so make sure if you have questions you come and talk to me. I hope you all have a fabulous day.